Good afternoon. This is Dave Alexander. I am from the Muskegon Rotary Club's program committee. And we've heard a lot about COVID-19 as it relates to business and even nonprofits. But it's our cities that we may not have heard as much about, and they are so essential to our lives in terms of our police, our fire, our roads, public utilities of sewer and water. Today we've got three of the leading city managers and administrators here in Muskegon County. We have Troy Bell from City of Muskegon Heights, Mark Meyers, City Administrator from the City of Norton Shores, and Frank Peterson, City Manager from City of Muskegon. And we'll be discussing how COVID-19 has hit them, what it means going forward. If we could just start, guys, with a little description of where your city was at beginning of March of this year. Seems so long ago. What kind of condition did your city approach this crisis with? Why don't we start with Mark?
All right, thanks, Dave. Well, we were in a great position. The economy was buzzing. We had new retailers, Burlington on Harvey Street, Chick-fil-A site plan approved on Harvey, several new manufacturers coming in from out of town or out of county, building brand new, multi-million-dollar facilities, and then also several housing communities coming online as well. So we were buzzing right along, doing very well.
Troy, what was the situation out in Muskegon Heights as you hit this crisis point?
Well, I had just come on board back in October part-time, and in January went full-time, and we had a number of initiatives that we were pursuing for the spring opening of the community. We had a solar project that was kicking off. We had just transitioned on Martin Luther King Day from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. Which took considerable planning and adjustment, but we had worked all the kinks out of that and begun to flow very nicely on a 4-day work week, being able to offer greater services to our community by being open earlier and being open later so that they had access to City Hall before and after work, and a number of programs, like I said, that were about to kick off and that were put on hold as a result of COVID-19.
Frank, what was the view over at the city as you were hearing about this kind of virus crossing?
I would say same thing. I would say same thing. I think that we were having a great year economically. I think that we were seeing, housing values and starts going up. We were seeing more people earning more income. It was just set to be a good year, and the big thing was it was set to be a great summer. There were a lot of events planned. Mm-hmm. There were, new cruise ships coming in. We were building a convention center. There were new construction projects supposed to be starting downtown. It was going to be a pretty amazing year. It was a great year coming into it, and all indicators were it was going to be a pretty amazing summer, 2020.
Mark or Frank, would you stay with you? What were the immediate issues your city faced as you hit mid-March?
Oh, geez. Well, obviously, the big issue that we faced was the unknown, right? There was a lot of information being thrown at us. There was a lot of fear, how bad that, the COVID-19 could be to our community. So really a lot of stuff just ground to a halt very, very quickly. We had to close City Hall. We lost access to our employees at a time when people really actually needed access to them. So at a time where everybody needed us, and people across the city were maybe scared isn't the right word, but they were in need of information and they were in need of direction. It was at the exact same time where we weren't going to be able to be there for them exactly in the way that we would have liked to be there.
Troy, what did the initial reaction?
Well, fairly similar. The unknown was the biggest issue. We didn't know if this was going to be a week, if it was going to be a month, or if it was going to be several months. And like I said, we were ready to kick off a number of programs. And so looking at the future of those programs, do we postpone them? Do we cancel them? Do we delay them? Do we make deposits? Do we make purchases? All of those things on hold in terms of a programmatic level. And then the concern about what might be the impact on revenues. Not only were we looking at what we needed to do programmatically, we were looking at how that was going to affect us budgetarily, if I may use that term. Not knowing whether or not we were going to have the funds or if we were going to be in a deficit position. We were just coming out of a situation where we almost lost one of our major tax contributors, Muskegon Family Care, and we were able to rescue that situation. So we knew we were going to be facing a reduction in revenue, but this put us in a whole nother level, whole nother ballpark.
Mark, the same. What was the view out in Norton Shores?
Yeah, very similar. We had to immediately decide what services could we provide, what couldn't we provide based on the executive orders. And of course, that changed continually over time, night and day. Our number one priority was the safety of our employees. So we immediately went to swing shifts, working from home, working remotely. Other than police and fire, which we actually staffed up a bit, at least initially, because of the unknown, as Troy and Frank mentioned.
What became, we'll stay with Mark here, what became the critical issues as weeks stretched into months?
I mentioned the ever-changing executive orders, so really staying on top of things. It was not only daily, sometimes it was hourly. We had a May 5th election, and we weren't sure if that was going to be held or not. And if it was, under what circumstances. We have 11 precincts. It involves a number of election workers, so we were concerned for their safety. And then once we went to, mostly AV ballot election, it meant ramping up staff to be able to, handle 6,000 or 7,000 ballots. So the election kept us very busy.
Troy,
unfortunately,
critical issues as weeks stretched into months.
Well, let me start by saying I think my staff did an excellent job in making the transition. I think the fact that we had already transitioned from 5 to 4 days created a platform for us to be able to make the adjustments necessary in terms of shifting to remote work, as well as shifting our services to non-contact services. So that actually worked well for us, remarkably well, in making that transition. However, the budgetary question, the fact that the numbers that were coming out were disproportionate for people of color, and specifically disproportionate for the population here in Muskegon Heights versus the rest of the county, were of particular concern, such that we actually issued a citywide state of emergency. Since we were experiencing 30% of the cases on average, whereas we're less than 7% of the population in Muskegon County. So we were looking to take dramatic steps to address the outbreak in our community on a health basis. So that meant additional restrictions on our businesses, additional restrictions on our residential facilities to try to flatten the impact or flatten the curve here in Muskegon Heights. So that was our primary focus. And as things stretched into additional weeks and months, the question was, well, what do we do in order to make sure that people understand the health impacts of this, that they are getting the information and the data that says that this is serious? There were a number of conspiracy theories out there that suggested that in our community, this was not a reality. And so we focused our efforts on trying to get information out there to let people know that this is a life or death situation, and that they needed to take the steps necessary to be safe. and then looking at how we were going to be able to adjust our budget. Fortunately for us, we're on a fiscal year that ends in December as opposed to at the end of June. So we have an opportunity to be able to recover, whereas some of my colleagues are faced with a more immediate issue. So that gives us a little leeway that we were working with, but the unknown still.
Frank, the same. Oh, what did those extra months start to look like at Muskegon City Hall?
Yeah, so I would just say that by and large we were really comfortable with with the response and the effort and the abilities of the local hospital system and of the health department. So a lot of what you'll probably hear me talking about is my focus was very much on, what can I do to make sure my organization gets through this situation? And when I say my organization, I mean as a service provider to the community. How do we make sure that we're still able to provide services that people very much rely on? And as the weeks stretch into months, became very clear that we needed certain people to be here almost full time. We needed certain people to not be here, and there was a lot of, for us, different levels of what I would call essential, employees. We probably had 5 tiers of level of essentialness, if you want to call it that, and we quickly tried to move folks to the federal work share program. I think we've been on work share. We probably have, of 250 employees, I bet you, between actual furloughs where people are gone 100% of the time, and furloughs where people are gone at least 15, 20, 30, 40, 50% of the time, I bet we have well over 100 people doing that right now. And for us, it was really important to move quickly, because just like there was a fear of the unknown of what the virus really was and how impactful it was going to be on us health wise, there was a big fear of a big unknown of what it was ultimately going to do to the economy and what it was ultimately going to do to local government's ability to provide services. The 3 people that are on this committee on this meeting with us right now, they all know that the federal government worked fast to make sure that safety protocols were in place from a financial standpoint for people and for corporations and for things like that. But we never really did that for local government. So all of us were stuck saying, okay, what is the future going to look like for us, and will there ever be any assistance to help us get through this pandemic from a financial and operational standpoint?
Troy, why don't you pick up on that in terms of staffing and finances?
Sure. And first, let me commend Frank for taking the lead in addressing or identifying some of the potential solutions that could be taken from a government perspective, and pointing out that the state has a responsibility because of the resources available to the state to step in and assist local governments, and pointing out the steps that the federal government had taken really do not positively impact us. For instance, as a city that depends on income tax, excuse me, for revenue, realizing that the unemployment that was being provided was exempt to that taxation, and for those people who were working from home, if they were working from home outside of my community, then that they were potentially exempt from having to pay income tax, even though their companies or corporations were located within our city limits. That in and of itself is a double jeopardy that we were facing. And so, again, I commend Frank for taking the lead and pointing that out to our elected officials and lobbying for some type of action to take place on that level. For us, in terms of staffing, the city was already operating pretty much on a very lean and mean staffing level. We were at bare bones, so the ability for us to lay people off or furlough people was very limited. 99% of our employees are critical on a day-to-day basis. Several of our employees perform multiple functions, so it really was not feasible for us to look at wide-scale layoffs or workforce reductions. So we worked through the issues of the COVID requirements in terms of social distancing and sequencing our staff and our employees, providing them with the necessary PPEs so that they could work in a safe environment. But we struggled through with the critical staff that we had. There are difficulties that we ran into were not having the technology to be able to do remote work, not having laptops or take-home computers, difficulty transitioning to the Zoom setting, particularly for our council meetings. For some of my colleagues that were accustomed to live streaming their council meetings, that was something that we had not done before. So that was a learning curve for both staff and the council and the community, quite frankly, because we're all accustomed to being able to come in and interact with our elected officials in person with that personal touch, and that was gone. And so how to reconcile that and how to work through that to still be able to serve the community and provide access was another significant challenge that we had to overcome.
Mark, staffing, finances out in Norton Shores?
Yeah, sure. So a key difference between Norton Shores and Muskegon Heights is we don't levy an income tax. So we didn't have that negative hit. Our primary source of revenue in the general fund is property tax. And unlike the Great Recession, we haven't had a housing bubble. So far, this downturn hasn't affected property values. So far that's a positive. Our second source is revenue sharing, which is derived from sales tax. Of course, that's down sharply during the lockdown, if you will, but will likely rebound. So we're seeing estimates at about 2 or 4% reduction. So we'll have to adjust to that. Gas and weight tax is down. That's what pays for our construction projects, our road projects. So we may have to delay a couple of those projects this fiscal year, just because people, weren't driving for 2 or 3 months for the most part. So in terms of staffing, like Muskegon Heights, we're very lean. We have about 100 full-time employees with that serve our 25,000 residents. So we're pretty lean and not a lot of room for layoffs or furloughs. We're still providing 95% of our services.
Got a couple more minutes here. Why don't we end up by taking a look into the future? Mark, why don't I stay with you? What's the new normal going to look like in the next year or two for city government?
Yeah, so, we're going to be very conservative. We're on a July 1 fiscal year, and so the budget was approved. It was put together between January and April. It was approved in May, and then, a lot of caveats. So we will look at reducing some spending, trying to enhance revenues. We'll delay some spending until mid-year till we have a better picture of what the downturn and the recovery looks like and its timing. So we're going to be very conservative, like most communities.
Troy, same thing. Where's the new normal going to be at out in Norton or out in Muskegon Heights as you go forward in the next year or two?
Sure. So we are going to push forward and try to continue as long as possible with providing our customer service remotely through the use of the Dropbox and through email and phone transactions. We just went live with our online payment system for water bills and summer taxes. So that should alleviate the need to come into City Hall. That's a measure that we're going to continue to try to take until we wait and see how the impact or what the impact is going to be for the opening of under the governor's plan for opening the state. And so I'm committed to making sure, unless there's a service deficiency, keeping my staff as safe as possible. So what that means in general is we're going to look at ways that we can leverage technology and incorporate technology more in the things that we do, because we've had the opportunity to make the shift and to encourage the population, our community, to make the shift to a more efficient and potentially a more effective way of doing business. We can save considerable amounts of money via the reduction in utilities through having City Hall on limited hours. So I'm looking to leverage that. And then looking at what types of programs that we're going to be able to accomplish through the end of the year. We're really focused on the cleanup of some of the blighted areas and leveraging the road projects that we have with the Sherman Street $3 million corridor project and our Park Street improvements, which is another road project, as a means of improving the appearance of our community and reclaiming the beauty of Muskegon Heights of years past. And so we're really looking to see how we can transition our efforts to that, away from the focus on providing walk-in service in our City Hall.
Finally, Frank, new normal for City of Muskegon.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the things that Troy said and some of the things that Mark said, and then put my own spin on it. But yeah, I think you'll find that we're going to try to do things a little bit differently around here in terms of how people access City Hall and how we encourage them to get their services if they don't have to come into City Hall to get their services. But and from a spending standpoint, you'll probably see that we're a little more conservative than I typically like to be in terms of making investments in the community. But at the same time, I do see this as an opportunity to kind of double down on the things that we were doing. We know they were working in the years leading up to this, and I think that in Muskegon, at least, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we stepped back from the things that were working and stopped doing them out of fear, especially if we know they were working, if we see they were working. And then some things we're not going to be able to stop. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with the convention industry, but I got a half-built convention center. It's going to get finished. It's going to get finished. And we're going to make it work. But I think you'll see that we're going to double down on bringing people in the downtown, making people want to come here for their, for whatever fun activities are allowed to be had at whatever level that is. And I think that all of us will probably come out of this leaner and meaner and way more efficient than we probably were before. This will help us make decisions that we probably thought were good ideas, but maybe couldn't quite get to those decisions for various reasons before. And now we're being forced to make those decisions. And we're going to find out that we're going to look back and say, dang, we should have did this 5 years ago. What were we thinking? And I think we'll come out leaner and meaner. And I think if we keep doing the stuff that was obviously working in Muskegon Heights and working in Norton Shores and working in Muskegon, we're going to walk out of this and we're going to look back a year or two from now and see that when it was all said and done, we didn't miss a beat.
Thanks, guys. To Troy, to Mark, Frank, good luck. Thank you for your service. And we'll take it back now to President Linda.